Rocco explained the difference between the outside and the inside to me. On the outside, a man rises to power using his ambition and cunning. On the inside, you make your way up the ropes one way and one way only, by the number of fellows you can rape. That's why, within the jail, Rocco's name was spoken in hushed tones. He was a raper's raper. He was staying right here in prison, he told me, because inside he had the necessary skills to command respect and prestige, but outside he was a nobody. I was no longer his lawyer, just another prisoner, and if I knew what was good for me, I'd better start raping. Now, I'd never raped anybody before, and in the free world, I had worn that fact as a badge of honor, mentioning it proudly and loudly at dinner parties and social events. Folks admired me for it. Say what you will about old Norm, my friends would often say, but he won't rape you. Every time I heard that, it'd make me feel good inside, like a warm shot of whiskey. But here in the penitentiary, the rules had been turned upside down. I wanted to fit in, but the problem was that I didn't care much for sex with men. I liked men fine when it came to watching football games with them and eating Cheetos and playing video games, but when it came to having sex with them, I just had to grin and bear it. You got it all wrong, Norm Rocco explained. Race has nothing to do with sex. It's all about power, buddy. I gotta admit, when Rocco first told me that, I thought it was about the damn foolest thing a man could say. But the more I chewed on it, the more sense it started to make. Rape was all about making the other guy feel small. Then I'd look big and strong beside him. I'd done similar things in the free world plenty, spraying a handful of quarters onto a busy thoroughfare and laughing as the homeless bums dodged cars and trucks to earn their supper. I had always felt really big inside when I'd done that, and apparently that's what raping a fellow in prison felt like. Or so Rocco told me. So I made up my mind then and there that as soon as the opportunity availed itself, I would take ungentlemanly advantage of some hapless prisoner. I got my opportunity while I was working one night in the machine shop, and I looked over, and there stood Marvin Edelman. Marvin was doing a 5-year bid for securities and exchange fraud. He had large black glasses, thinning gray hair, and whiskers that made him look just like a rodent with large black glasses. I shouted at him loud so all my fellow inmates could hear. Hey, Edelman, I'm going to rape you the same way you raped the people who invested all their money in your Ponzi schemes. The only difference is, whereas you raped them, in a metaphorical sense, I'm setting out to. I stopped my speech. Marvin had fled. I had made the biggest mistake of the novice raper. I had made my intentions known. The whole yard laughed at me as I turned beet red. I took off in an embarrassed rage, determined that I would rape Marvin Edelman before the sun touched the horizon. It took a while, but I finally located Marvin, cowering behind a belt sander. This was a good sign. Whenever a guy is cowering, you know you have the upper hand. I started chasing him, but he was fast and elusive, like a jackrabbit wearing large black glasses. I had run at him full speed, thinking I finally had him, but at the last moment he ducked to his left or his right, and I'd go crashing into a wall. I was dog-tired and gasping heavily when I finally got him cornered, and as I made a final lunge toward him, I tripped and hit my head on a belt sander. I don't know how long I was out, but when I regained consciousness, the first thing I heard was the laughter. I looked around, and all the prisoners were beside themselves with delight, laughing and poking each other in the sides. The only man who was not laughing was Rocco. He sat in a chair way in the back, but he was close enough that I could see the disappointment in his eyes. I couldn't make sense of any of it, but then I turned around and saw what had the boys in the black and white pajamas convulsing in this mass paroxysm of mirth. There behind me was Marvin Edelman, all 130 pounds of him. And what do you suppose Marvin was doing that was so funny that he had everybody busting a gut? Well, he was raping me. That's what. He was raping the hell out of me. You know, I had never understood the concept of irony before, but I guessed that this was it all right, and I was not a fan. Get the hell off me, Edelman! And enough with the raping, I said. Why should I? Yeah, why should he? The prisoners repeated as one. I was starting to feel pretty powerless, so I had to think, and think fast. I'll tell you why I said, because if you don't cut out the raping and pronto, I'll go to my cell and get my handmade knife, and that'll be the end of you. I made a mental note to fashion myself a handmade knife when I got back to my cell. But I'm willing to make a deal with you, Edelman. We're both civilized men. You quit raping me right now, and there will be no hard feelings. And you won't see a reprisal rape out of me either. I promise you that. Marvin stopped his raping for a minute, and I could see by the look on his face he was turning the offer over in his mind. I don't know, he said. I kind of like this feeling of power. But rape isn't about power, Marvin. You've got it all wrong. It's about sex, don't you see? I could tell this was confusing, Marvin. That gave me just the time I needed. I slammed my elbow into his spectacles. I'm blind! I'm blind! He screamed. And you're raped as well, I said triumphantly. And I began my savage reprisal rape of Marvin Edelman, prisoner 6020311. Now who's raping whom? I asked. Edelman must have thought this was a rhetorical question because he just whimpered and cried. And my non-rhetorical question hung awkwardly in the air, unanswered, before I proclaimed, I'm raping you! That's who! Just then a guard showed up. You've done your time, McDonald. You're free to go. I am, I asked. I thought I was in for 40 years. Nope, 4 months. Well, I'll be damned. We all had a good laugh at that one. Hey, how about this? If I had a gun to my head and had to pick a vice presidential candidate to have sex with, I would choose Sarah Palin and Spiro Agnew. Remember Spiro Agnew? Do I remember him? Hot piece of ass? You know what I would like to hear? A poem. Do you have a poem?